Hi, this is Jim Jubelirer, Jubelirer Results Group, and I'd like to welcome you to First Friday's Supercharge Your Sales Process. Right now is an excellent time to put energy into your sales process. Some of you have seasonal businesses where the holidays are most busy. Some of you have a steady state throughout the year, but whatever cycle your business is in, you can always get a good payoff from investing in your sales process. But we don't just want to invest in it, we want to supercharge it. So let's dive in. I do sales training for companies as part of our top line growth in the Scaling Up Gazelles framework. So most all of my clients are making investments in sales, salespeople, marketing, new websites, and so my work reflects that. I'll be doing some upcoming talks. Next week, Discover Your Why at the North Carolina Executive Roundtable. We won't be offering First Fridays in July and August of this month, and we'll resume again in September. So let's dive right in. It's important to realize that there's really no such thing as selling. What sales actually is helping people make a decision, make a purchasing decision or make a decision not to purchase, and doing that in a professional way. There's really no such thing as selling, and this is a very, very important mind shift for you to get your head around. You can't convince anybody to do anything. All you can do is help them make up their mind. The shortest sales training course I can offer you is actually one sentence, 4 words long. Ask questions and listen. Ask more questions, listen better. As long as you keep asking good questions to help you discover what your prospects' motivations and considerations are, you'll be moving the sales process forward. But let's get into more detail. The secret sauce to being successful in selling is a 4-step process, 3-step process that I will walk you through. The first step is to profile your revenue. What this means is you have to know where your business comes from. You have to know what kind of customer, what type of customer, which customers, what type of service, what type of business, what the product that you offer. And over again, we find that people don't spend enough time profiling their customer base, their revenue stream. There's something called the 80-20 rule that says 20% of your customers account for 80% of your revenue. This law is always true, except when it isn't. And when it isn't, it's because it's not 80-20, it's 90-10. In other words, we see this pattern over and over again, repeated in every industry, every product, every country that we work in. And it basically says a small amount of your customers are disproportionately important for you achieving your overall results. The second step is to be able to segment your customers into various groups or categories. It could be a geographic segmentation. It could be because of the size of their company. It could be because of the product of yours they purchased. There are many ways to segment your customer. In addition to profiling your revenue, which is your cash flow, you need to profile your customers. The quote on this page comes to us from Jack Daly, the maniac sales trainer, who says, "Don't complain about the economy until you have 10 pieces of personal information on every prospect and customer. Do you have their birthday? Do you have their spouse's name? Do you know their favorite sports teams? These kind of personal pieces of information go a long way towards prospects and customers knowing, liking, and trusting you. So I want to walk you through this slide. In the upper left, what we have, on the left side, we have your core business. That is the products and services that you're primarily known for. And you sell your core to existing customers and new customers. So you get recurring revenue by selling your core services to existing businesses. That's the upper left-hand quadrant. You have to pursue a strategy of directly selling to new customers and offering them what you're known for, what your core is. That's the lower left-hand quadrant. On the right side, we have new business, meaning new customers. And to get new business from existing customers, we need to offer new products, we need to upsell, we need to cross-sell. And if we want to get new business from new customers providing new services, we really have to greatly expand our network through referrals and alliances. So what I find with everyone I work with is they tend to pay attention to one or two of these quadrants, and they tend to not spend as much time as they could in one or two of the other quadrants. This is a very, very important chart for you to understand, that there are very different sales strategies depending on what you're selling and who you're selling it to. The more you learn, the more you earn. The more you read, the better you lead. So I wanted to mention a couple of books that I consider to be particularly important. From a sales point of view, Spin Selling, which has been around a long time, I think it's still one of the best books. And they have a separate Spin Selling for key accounts if you sell to large companies. The second book is a classic, Stephen Covey, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. If you haven't ever read it, read it. If you have read it, it's worth rereading. It's such a timeless classic. The next is Getting Naked by Patrick Lencioni. It's a fable. It's a tale. He takes a few too many pages to make his point, but the point he makes is very good, which is to win the trust of clients and prospects, you have to be vulnerable, or what he calls naked. You have to be willing to look dumb. You have to be willing to ask the hard questions. You have to take a bullet for your customers. And those are some of the practices he talks about in Getting Naked. So if you're listening to this webinar, I challenge you to pick up one or more of these books. Could be an audio book you listen to in the car. You could have an ebook on your Kindle or your iPad. Doesn't matter as long as you're learning. Pick one book and tell me that you've done that, and I will give you pointers of what to look for in that book. I want you to be efficient and effective with your study. So now we want to turn not to the sales process, but to the sales person. We know from studying high-performing salespeople what you have to do to be successful in sales. And everyone knows that most people aren't all that successful in sales. So the first hallmark of a successful salesperson is they're very clear about their focus, their purpose. Some people are really money-driven, and that's okay. They're clear about their purpose. Other people like the technical challenge or the social challenge of coordinating projects. Other people like to make a contribution and see companies do well. Whatever it is, the good salesperson knows their purpose. The second objective is, the second criteria of a successful salesperson is they're good at asking questions. So what does that cost you? So when would you like to have a solution in place? Have you considered other options? When do you want to make a decision? What do you think would be most helpful? A series of questions that lead the prospect into their own decision-making process. The third habit of a successful salesperson is they follow a repeatable process. Every individual sales situation will be slightly different, but the process will be the same. How do you engage? What material do you show them? What questions do you ask? When do you talk about money and pricing and terms and conditions? Following a standard process allows you to be more efficient and effective with your time and effective with your messaging because you know what you're trying to achieve at each step in the process. So one aspect of the process is to have scripts. In other words, standardized ways that you can communicate what's important to you. So I cannot overemphasize the importance of scripts. A lot of people think salespeople just show up and wing it, but the best salespeople know exactly what they want to say and how they want to say it. Next, you have to have good materials. Did I say you have to have a lot of materials? Not necessarily. Many companies have too much marketing collateral, and they inundate their customers. Depending on how complicated your business is, a few simple pieces should convey your brand promise and let the individual salesperson continue that message from there. The final habit of a successful salesperson, we like to say, God gave us one mouth and two ears to remind us of the ratio between talking and listening, 2 to 1, or 1 to 2. But if in studies of successful salespeople, the actual ratio was 3 or 4 times more were spent listening than were talking. 3 to 4 times more. Not 1 in 2, but 1 in 4. So we want to prime the pump to help people be successful at whatever their sales process is. So these are some meditations on success. It's imperative that you have a specific purpose, which is an intent of something you want to convey or a desired outcome you want to have happen for every touch with that prospect. You can't just call them up and say, hey, how you doing? What's happening? You need to be helping them make a decision. You always, always want to establish value before discussing price. So, you've said your number one problem is attracting and retaining top talent. Do I have that right? And if we were to come up with a solution for that problem, would you go ahead and implement it? And previously, you told me this is costing you about $500,000 a year. So if the solution had a positive payoff and saved you money, would you do it? And so you've already established value before you ever discuss the price. Another thing that people lose sight of is trust trumps price. If you don't have the trust, there's no point in talking about the price. People do business with people they like and trust. And people like people who like what they like. So find the connection points. the top 10% ask 6 times more questions. Interestingly, a lot of people feel like asking questions means they're losing control of the meeting, letting the other person talk. But the irony of that is the person who asks the questions is actually in more control. And depending on what the answerer says, the asker can then guide the conversation where they want to go next. I'm going to encourage you to be the coach when you're talking to your prospects to help them along in their decision-making process. We all have experienced rejection. In many cases, we've all experienced very painful rejection. And yet, the people who thrive in a sales role don't let that rejection get to them. Let your past make you better, not bitter. Third, many of you say, but I don't have time to do all of this, or I'm so busy running things, I don't have time to get out there and make the sales calls. With my clients, one of the first things we look at is productivity and effectiveness. And what we find is everyone is spending too much of their time, up to 50% of their time, doing tasks that a $10, a $15, a $25 an hour person could be doing, where you as the business owner would go off and do things that will earn 10 times that. If you don't have an assistant, you are an assistant, and you're squandering your valuable time, which you can never get back. When you care more about helping the customer than getting the sale, you will sell more. We have many examples of companies or salespeople going out of their way to take a customer-centric perspective. And when they do, when they take a customer-centric perspective rather than a company-centric perspective. And that may cost them in the short term. It may actually cost some money. But in the long term, you will be creating that kind of customer trust and loyalty that will pay off many times more when you care more about the customer than about the sales. Next, we see too many people getting very involved in the technical aspects of their product. Well, we have this XYZ widget that runs at 23 kilobytes and processes your widgets at a throughput rate of 23 per day. Hello, you need to focus on the outcomes that you're going to create and the benefits that your product or your service has. So we say focus on the benefits, not the speeds and feeds. This is a very important point to make. So what we've done today is just talk about things at a very high level. I wanted to give you a short blast of information and inspire you to want to invest the time in supercharging your sales process. So to do that, I'm offering you a complimentary sales process review, which will consist of a sit-down meeting where we will go through everything that we've talked about on this webinar and do an assessment of you, if it's just you personally, and or your team, in order to suggest recommendations for improvement. So I'm encouraging you to take advantage of the complimentary sales process review. I'm Jim Jubelirer, Jubelirer Results Group. This has been First Friday's Supercharge Your Sales Process, and I wish you very good luck with your selling.